Welcome to another episode of Hat Collecting, the Multi-Passionate Experience. I'm very excited today. I'm your host. I keep forgetting to do this. I'm your host, Lacey Artemis. I am joined today. I'm very excited to have Marie Incontrera here. We've become good friends and colleagues over the past few months, and I'm excited to talk to you about what you do. This show, as the title suggests, the multi-passionate experience. I am a multi-passionate myself. I like to talk to other multi-passionates, which Marie is. But we don't only talk about that all the time, but today we will be. So Marie, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So I am the founder and CEO of Incontrera Consulting, and we are a full-service digital marketing and speaker training and placement and a PR agency. So that's on the 9 to 5 side of things, or sometimes 7 to 7 side of things. And by night, I am a musical theater writer, and that is sort of my 5 to 9, my weekends, all of that. And I got here by way of being a working jazz musician through my 20s. Completely random, completely, I went to music school. I have a degree in classical and jazz composition. And the thing they don't tell you in music school is that you could be, playing Carnegie Hall, which I was, and you could be broke, which I was. And so as I had just turned 30, and a really good friend of mine, whose name is Dory Clark, so if you don't know that name, you should, and check her out. She sent me a text message and she said, I have an idea. I think you should quit your job and, try starting a business. And the rest is history, as they say. And so my business, my virtual assistant business in the beginning was supposed to be something that could fund my music career, that could give me a little bit more time. And it just grew. It grew to what it is today.
Mm-hmm. And I met Marie through the Corliss network, a Corliss community, which is started in Canada, but it has become international. It's a women and non-binary entrepreneur group community. And I had asked around back in the winter, the early spring, looking for a speaker agent. And somebody referred me to you, and we had a call, and I was just like, I felt the vibes instantly. And we've been working together, and it's been really exciting. And I really feel like the thing I was happiest about, and I've told other people this, that most of the agents or the coaches that you talk to, they're like, you can't do all these things. You have to do one thing. And that's just never, ever worked for me. And I came and I talked to you, and you never said anything even remotely close to that. And you're just like, no, these are all great ideas. Let's figure out pitches for all of them. So that's been really, really appreciated that. And it's really also helped me with my own confidence. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. And thank you for the vote of confidence and the trust and the partnership. But also, I would be doing a disservice if I ever said, no, this is the one thing. And by the way, here is the one thing, right? Because I could be wrong. So I have always been most successful by trying a lot of different things and seeing what works. And, so if you are the same way, which I know you to be by now, we try all of them and we say, okay, so, this talk got placed a few times, this one didn't. So let's focus a little bit more, or let's think about why these didn't get placed. Right. So that's always been my methodology. And I really love working with people who have lots of hats that they wear, because it's always really fun and you get to put your hands in a lot of buckets.
Yeah, the other cool thing about it, I think you mentioned this on one of our calls, was there's obviously, because I have a background, I have a career that I have, stepped kind of ahead from now, from accounting and finance and that kind of the corporate world. But I also have had, in my entire life, I've been an artist, and also the neurodivergent thing, which I really kind of leaned into in the last several years. So you kind of said well, we can pitch you to mental health conferences. We could pitch you to finance conferences. We could pitch you to, whatever else. And so it's like, there's always somewhere that your which one of my hats will fit. So it's just about, finding the right fit and the right, pitch and everything. So again, that was very encouraging for me, because everyone else I've spoken to is just like, no, forget all that other stuff. Like, you're doing this thing, and then once you got that hammered down, then we'll let you add one more thing. And it's like, I'll go crazy. I can't. So.
I mean, same, and as a neurodivergent person myself, right? Like I really believe that has been my superpower, has been my ADHD. I can think of 12 things at once, and I can write a show and also keep my business running, and also, do business development, and also deliver on work, and also, spend time with my partner, and all of the things. And, I think that that's something that is very special, because a lot of people don't have that capacity. So the fact that we do, why not lean into it?
Yeah. Speaking of ADHD, my brain just did one of those things where I had a thought, and then I thought it was something else for a second. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and I'm not used to thinking of it like this, but he put it in this context for me, that it's like, because his partner is ADHD and he is neurotypical to the best of his knowledge. And he was like, she can process ridiculous amounts of information. It's like, for people that don't know computers as well, modern day computers have what's called multi-threading. So you have the cores in them, and each core can do 2 threads. So if you have an 8-core processor, it can do 16 threads. And he's like, that's how ADHD brains work. But neurotypical brains have 1 processor, 1 thread. They can only handle one thing. And I'm just like, that seems like such a shame. But it helps explain why, like we said, I can run a business, I can be writing music, I can be writing a book, I can be planning events, like all these different things, and I can just do it. And some people are just like, I don't get how you do this. Like, it just works.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's actually the perfect metaphor for it, because I feel like I am not happy unless I'm multi-threading. I'm not satisfied unless I have, several things going at once. Otherwise I feel a little lost, honestly.
Yeah. So I had some questions that I've written down. I know we've kind of touched on one of them already, but if you had to sort of maybe specify what aspect of, because I know you have ADHD, I have autism and ADHD, but like what specific aspect, or like, I guess in terms of, aside from the multi-threading thing, what would you say is the biggest kind of like upside or benefit for neurodivergent brains in just kind of being able to progress forward with things and be successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think building a situation for yourself where you will be successful, to the best that you can, has been what I see neurodivergent entrepreneurs, what makes them successful, right? And using myself as an example, right? I have built something where I can multi-thread. I have several offers, I have several teams going at once, right? I even have a whole separate business that is going alongside my main business. I have all of these things. And so I have been very fortunate that I could create the conditions in which I know I can be successful. And so that's the advice that I have for anybody who's neurodivergent and multi-passionate, is like, lean into those things as best you can, right? It's a privilege to be able to be in this kind of situation. I don't have a boss to answer to, right? I have clients to answer to, but I don't have a boss to answer to. And so I'm very lucky in that way. But you can start small, right? Maybe it's an hour a day. Create the situation, that the conditions in which you'll be successful, and then from there, you can build.
Yeah, and so one of the newer things that's kind of in my realm and on my plate, I guess you might say. So people might already be aware. If not, I started an events company a little while ago. Already Mix Events, which is play on my own name, and it's centered around playful and creative social connection events. But also, I do workshops to do skill building, and I work with other people that run their own events, so I can either be like a MC for hire, or I can help plan and organize and handle logistics. But also through all the different things that I've done over the years, now I'm also doing, or I'm about to start doing, coaching and consulting around career stuff, life stuff, creativity. It's funny, somebody suggested to me like last year, it's like, you're a really good creativity coach. It's like,
Yep.
that's a thing? Like, I've heard of life coaches, I've heard of career coaches, I've never heard of a creativity coach, but I guess. So yeah, it's called Shine Language. That's my brand there. And I'm very excited to be getting into that because like I've been through it, and I find that the best coaches are the ones that have been through it and they understand
Yeah.
it. And especially on the neurodivergent side, like I literally feel like I need to just write a book that just says like how to do everything the hard way, because that's how I feel like my life has been. It's like, how can we, like, sure, there's easy way, there's smart ways to do this, but like if I do it the hardest way, I'll learn so much.
How to do everything the hard way. That's a great title. Oh my gosh. I see now I'm gonna do the thing where I'm like that's actually really great. Because it speaks to a lot of people's pain points, and that is such a great sell from stage talk. So anyway, we'll talk about that. I'll go send you a pitch after this.
Well, so for example, I'll just give a really quick thing here. I had a meeting recently with somebody, like, because I'm in these different entrepreneur communities, and I was on a call where there was somebody who was a financial advisor person, and we kind of chatted briefly. And I was like, yeah, so like I left my job 6, 7, 8 months ago, whatever it was, and I'm like, I just know what I want to do. I know what I'm good at, and I'm going all in because this is happening.
Yeah.
And people are like, but you can't just start a new career in 6 months. And I'm like, can you though? Like, if anyone can, I'm going to find out. And I have learned so much.
Yeah. I mean, not for nothing. I made that decision, and in 6 weeks I was gone from my last job. Right. So you absolutely can. And I remember the first conversation that we had, you're like, so I started 2 businesses. And I was like, okay, you're my people. Good. This is good.
Yeah, I already had 3. So it's like, oh, now I have 5.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do, actually, I want to take a quick second to let you, since I just did a little bit of self-promotion there. Is there anything other than your the growth speak and your consulting that you would like to briefly talk about here?
Yeah. So obviously I have my day job business, and that's the website Incontrera.com. Growth Speak is my my pitching brand underneath that, right? So Incontrera is the legal name of my business. And then under that I have Growth Speak. And the reason I renamed it is because it won't always just be me, right? I also have a team, and eventually they'll be a little bit more front facing. So I started a name that doesn't have to be tied to, you hear from Marie all the time, right? So that is that piece of the business. I also have a little engine that could cleaning dispatch service that I started with my partner late last year. It is growing very, very, very slowly, partly because I didn't know that my main business would be as busy as it is. But it's one of those things that I can turn the faucet anytime I want. With Facebook ads and meeting people in my neighborhood and that kind of thing. So it's been a different kind of business. And then on the weekends / evenings / all the time that I am not working, which is not much of it, I'm writing a couple of musical theater works. One of them is off Broadway bound, I would say. We have a cabaret coming up in the fall. That's an industry night, and we have a Broadway star as our lead, and just trying to get our musical theater works moved forward. I have a writing partner for that piece. I'm also working on one of my own, and I'm writing everything book, music, and lyrics for that. So it's been, it's nice to have my hands in all of those pots.
Yeah, music is one of those things I don't talk about a whole lot these days because I haven't been active in it for several years now. But I've been thinking lately, because the very first proper album that I ever did with recorded instruments was in 2006. So the 20-year anniversary, which blows my mind is coming
Wow.
up.
Yeah.
And like I've been wanting to like re-record some of those songs, and I just like my life situation and circumstances haven't really made that super viable. But I've also never performed my own original music live before, and that is something that I want to do at some point. So again, probably not going to happen this year, maybe, but probably
Yeah.
not. So that's the thing that I'm kind of thinking about, because it's been about 8 years since I was actively making or working on music, and I've been really starting to feel that itch again, which is what has been my whole
Yeah.
life. With people like, there's been a time where like I spend a few years and I'm focusing on writing, and then I'll come back to graphic design more, and then I'll get into video, and I'll do now that I've got also like comedy and puppetry stuff. Like there's
Hmm.
all these things, and I can't go more than a few months usually without kind of scratching any of those itches. So, yeah, I get the music thing, and I think that next year that's probably going to become a bigger part of my
Awesome.
sort of goings on again. That and I also want to make a music video at some point, which I now have the capability and ability to do. So,
Nice. 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 Yeah.
yeah.
It's hard. I mean, I find that, I took I would say a 3-year break. In 2017, things were really hard, and the jazz world was a little bit upside down because Me Too was happening, and a lot of that community was very affected in various ways. I also was very burned out on it, and it's so easy. Music is so easy to get burned down on because there's the notion that at least this was true for me. There's the notion that you have some sort of calling as a musician, and it's supposed to supersede everything in your life. And I think that's just the culture that is at least around classical and jazz music. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And my business was starting, and I said, great, I'm going to focus on that. And then my writing partner, Dory, so the same person who helped me start my business, she kept saying to me, I want to write a musical. You should do it with me. I said, no, I'm done. I'm finished. And well, no, and it took about 6 months. And one day she walked me, we went on like a 5-mile walk in Lower Manhattan. It was Pride weekend. It was blazing hot out. It was 2019. And I was totally not prepared to walk. I was like wearing nice clothes because we were going out to dinner with clients and all of that stuff. And I was sweating. And I think she did it I think she did it to torture me a little bit and like break me down. And during that conversation, she said, listen, in 7 years, I'm going to be on Broadway. Where are you going to be? And I went, okay, well, I guess I don't want to live with that regret in my life. Right. And I never, the point being, between 2017 and 2019 and 2020, I never thought I would go back to music, and it found its way to me again. So I think like one thing that everybody should be aware of is that like we get burned out, same as everybody else. Just because we have a talent of some sort doesn't mean that we don't get burned out and don't need breaks.
I love that she said that to you, like in 7 years I'm gonna be on Broadway, because like that is such a like ballsy and self-affirming thing. And like I
Yeah.
get that energy because like I feel like I've kind of always been like that, and I just have never really known very many people who were. And so that's part of why for so many years I just kept like struggling on doing all these projects and doing way too much by myself, and I kept like burning out. Like the original hat collecting stopped because I was doing way too bloody much work by
Yeah.
myself, and it's like I loved it and I'm still super proud of it, but it's like I can't keep doing this. So
Yeah.
but it makes a lot more sense now. But like that's the sort of thing where I was like, doing a TED talk was something that was on, like I applied to do one of those like 10 years ago, and I got rejected, and I just never bothered to follow up on it. But I'm like, I still wanted to do it. It's just like, I guess it's not going to happen. And now I'm like, I say this a lot. It's one of my like kind of go-to lines of like, I say, shoot for the stars, at least you'll land on the moon kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like you set these big goals, and maybe you won't actually get all the way to them, but you're going to get a lot further than if you just like, I kind of like to do that, but I don't, so just, and that's part of the reason also why like this coaching idea appeals to me. Cause like I said, I've been through all these things, and like,
Yeah.
if you have this like fire inside and you just need somebody to be like your cheerleader and be like, no, F yeah, like what's your goal? Let's make this happen. Like that's who I am for myself. Why can't I be that for other people?
100%. And I also want to say that like the timing thing is something to be aware of. The thing of shooting for the moon and sometimes you don't reach it is absolutely real. I mean, if we look at our timeline, that was in 2019. So Dory said 7 years, so that's 2026. It's middle of 2025 already. Unless a miracle happens, are we going to end up on Broadway in 2026? Probably not, right? But 27, 28, 29, the chances that we'll get there are pretty high, or pretty decent, I'll say, given that we have worked so hard toward that goal. And it's the same thing with someone like you. You had the goal of doing a TED Talk. You applied to one. By the way, I do that work. It's a numbers game, right? It's the matter of finding the right pitch and the right event for you. And so it didn't happen 10 years ago. Maybe it'll happen in another 3 or in another 2. Maybe you'll get paid to speak later this year. Maybe it will be the following year, right? Maybe it'll be the year after that, but your coaching business will also build alongside of that, right? Like, so the goals of it all will happen in time.
Yeah. There's another thing. I feel like now we're into like a coaching conversation, which is totally fine, but it's not where I expected this to go. But the one other thing that I'm thinking of, and I think it was, it might have been Chris Hadfield that I originally got this from, who's a Canadian astronaut, or former astronaut, perhaps, I'm not sure. But I know he went to space. I know that much. But somebody was talking on a podcast about like something from, I guess, his book or maybe an interview that he did on TV where he was saying like, what's your goal? And like, what is one, no matter how small it is, one tangible step that you can take every single day towards that goal? Because people get overwhelmed by this thought of like, oh, well, I have to like accomplish it all tomorrow. It's like, no, you have, 365 days potentially. You can set a 1-year goal for yourself. And I take that to the exponential degree ridiculously, but that's what motivates me. It's like little goals they don't feel that motivating to me. So I like the bigger things. I'm just like, it really makes me want to like, push for it. So
No, I agree. I mean, there's this controversial billionaire that I follow, and I don't agree with a lot of the things that he says, but one of the things that I do agree, and he's a very good businessman.
Is his name Gary by chance?
No.
Okay.
No, it is not Gary V. No, but so he actually I could say it because he loves the attention. Grant Cardone, right?
Okay, I haven't heard of him.
Check him out. Now, you're not going to agree with everything. He's got very specific beliefs about money and the economy and the world and politics and all of that. So I absolutely don't agree with a lot of that. But what I do agree with is that, so 2 things. First of all, he says that you can't 1x your goals, you have to 10x them. Otherwise, if you don't reach the 1x, if your goal is, let's say your goal is to get 5 coaching clients. If you only reach out to 5 people, what happens? You're not going to reach your goals, right? If you reach out to 50 people or 500 people, you're going to have 5 coaching clients. It's a mathematical inevitability, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I really resisted his work for a long time. And then I said, I think there are a lot of things here that make sense. And so I ended up in his coaching program, and I don't work with him. I work with one of his coaches. And one of the things that I absolutely still do is that you want to be on one stage, we have to apply to 50 of them, right? You want to be on 5 stages? Well, guess what? We have to 10x that number, right? And that's the only way you ever meet any goals.
It's interesting. Like I never made this connection before, but I remember years ago, like reading how when I guess most bands do this, but like certain bands that I particularly follow, like they write 50 songs for an album, and then only 10 of
Yeah,
those songs make it onto the album, and it's
that's absolutely
because
right.
there's only
Mm-hmm.
going to be 10 good songs. Like you can't just write 10 songs and they're all automatically going to be great. Like, so
Yeah.
it's the same kind of idea. And I've always thought like, well, some of those other ones have to be kind of decent too. And I guess some of them do kind of get brought back years later and they end up on another album at some point. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
that same principle.
I mean, it's the same thing in musical theater, right? You know, we cut songs that are great all the time because they don't work for the show, right? Because we're treading the same idea over a second song from the first one, or maybe that, you know, the hook doesn't work quite as well as another one, right? Like so I've written, you know, for my show Absolute Zero, I've probably written, you know, 30 songs, and we have 15, 16, right? So it's the same exact thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things that I want to say on this, but like I don't want this to just become like the like coaching and marketing experience.
Why not? You know, not for nothing. Like you're a coach. It's
Yeah. Well, the only
you know.
other thing I was gonna sort of allude to, without kind of getting way into the weeds, is that's even that same thing is true with networking,
Yeah.
that I found, because when I started on this journey, like I've been networking for years, but like when I made this like firm decision of like I am going to be a paid professional speaker and that is
Yeah.
going to be my living, like I was like, well, that's not going to happen if I just like, if I just make a few videos and I just like do this and that. Like I knew I needed to really, like I said, launch into it. And so I've been there, and like I really wish that I had more like capacity and presence of mind to like keep track of the like, this person referred me to this person, that person referred me to that person. Like, for example, I remember the person who told me that Corliss existed. And so I joined Corliss, and then somebody in that group told me about you, and then I connected with you, and then through you, I've connected with other people.
Right.
And there's been a bunch of those. And like, I really, because there's people now where I'm like, I don't remember how I got connected to you, but I wish that I did. And just joining all the different groups and communities that I have. And I've also been like, funny enough, like Threads, I know, totally valid. A lot of people are like, F meta, we don't want to be on meta platforms anymore. Again, totally valid. But I'm actually finding that Threads seems to have a good algorithm that if you post like, I want to meet, fellow like artists and entrepreneurs and neurodivergent people and queer people, it's really good at like putting those
That's
people in your
awesome.
feed. So I've been having fun with that lately.
That's good to know. I haven't done too much with Threads. You know, it sort of had a very big splash, and then, you know, kind of, at least from what I could see, fizzled. But that's good to know that it's good for meeting people in the way that, you know, X was back then, you know, and kind of putting out there like I want to meet these people, you know.
This is something I'd be curious to get your take on. I don't think we've specifically talked about this. I made the deliberate choice years ago, because again, I was like, I want to, maximize my discoverability, because I am too busy to really promote very actively. So I was like, well, then I'm just going to I'm going to reserve my name on every account, and or every platform, and I won't necessarily be active on all of them, but at least I have something there and people can find my website and get back to me. And I did that. And then more recently, like I just attended an in-person, kind of panel workshop discussion thingy, around LinkedIn, and they were saying like, get really, really like master one platform and then have like a secondary platform and ignore the rest. And I was like, I get that, like, you don't want, like, I will admit, if I tried to be fully active on 10 different platforms, I know that would just not work at all. But like, funny enough, like I saw somebody recently say like, forget Instagram, like it's just not what it used to be, and it's not really like worth it anymore. And so like primarily through your advice, and also I just know that like, in terms of speaking stuff, like LinkedIn is definitely going to be one of the best places to be to get noticed for that. So I really ramped up my LinkedIn game, and I've kind of fallen off on Instagram because I just feel like it takes a lot more effort to post on there.
Sure.
But I've been doing more Threads and a little bit of Facebook. But like, what are your platforms of choice besides LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, so for business, LinkedIn is it. And LinkedIn and email for me are where I spend the majority of my time. I am highly visible, highly visible. I invest a lot of time into doing that, and it has really paid off for my business, both like from a client's perspective and also as like a thought leader, very visible perspective, right? So that has really paid off. I use Instagram. I more use it personally in kind of documenting my life. Also, I think we're around the same age. I'm still on Facebook, and Facebook for me is like friends and, you know, the people you know from high school. I'm in one professional group that is still on Facebook, and it means a lot to me. So I'm more active there than I probably would be otherwise. But the thing about visibility is that, like, being that visible, I mean, we're human, right? We only have so much time. If you can only max out one or two, then do them as best you can, do as much as you can, do it as smartly as you can, test the market will give you feedback, right? You know, I can talk about theory all day about why this is going to be a good post or whatever it is, and the only way to actually know if it's going to work for your audience is to post and to get out there. And, you know, my LinkedIn work, I've been eating my own cooking for about a year of like posting every day, doing 2 newsletters a week, you know, also doing email newsletters, and I get 2 to 5 calls booked every week. I get 10 to 20 people signed up for my webinars. My list has grown, right? So this stuff takes time, but going in on LinkedIn as a speaker is one of the best things you can do, or as a coach even.
Yeah, one of the things that was said in that talk that I went to was, and somebody asked about video, and I know that you had really encouraged me to do LinkedIn Live videos. And he said, in his view, it's like, you know, if you have the capacity to do video and you like doing video, then do it. But it's like not make or break in his mind. But so I'm fortunately one of the people that likes to do video and can do video. So I'm trying to do more of it. And I realized this too, because like I started my own LinkedIn newsletter, which is kind of partly inspired by seeing your example. And I kind of like, I've been trying to do a lot more like writing on there because it's easier, in air quotes, to just like do quick posts. But it occurred to me recently, like if I'm trying to become a paid speaker, it really helps if people can like see and hear me and not just read my words. And so I'm like, I need to actually, so I've been trying to I mean, part of that is, you know, why hat collecting is like ramping back up. And this month I'm July 2025 is Disability Pride Month, and we're both, you know, invisibly disabled with neurodivergence, and I've got several other people lined up this month that I'm interviewing that I'm really excited about to talk about all kinds of different disabilities, because, like, I mean, I know that like Queer Pride, LGBTQ Pride Month gets a lot of attention, but I feel like Disability Pride really kind of doesn't.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I read something, I think it was on Facebook, which, you know, take or leave, but I read something that said there's no marriage equality without the disability community. And I absolutely believe that to be true, you know, and there's no equality without considering the disability community. You know, I think the number is you can't have more than $2,000 in your bank account and still get disability, at least in the States. I don't know if that's still true, but, you know, the system is really set up against people who, you know, on paper have a disability, right? I have been privileged enough. First of all, I'm late diagnosed, right? I was diagnosed as an adult. Second of all, my neurodivergence is friendly to this world, right? And it allows me to be very productive. It allows me to be very successful and capable. So, you know, I get a lot of the privilege that many disabled folks don't, right? But this world is not set up for people like us.
Yeah. It's a similar thing here in Canada. Unfortunately, I have a
Yeah.
few friends who are on disability, and the threshold for how much money that you can make to even qualify is absurdly low. Like
Yeah.
at this point, the threshold for disability in Canada, to the best of my knowledge, is less than well less than the median monthly rent in this country.
Yeah.
So you basically can't even make your own rent money and still qualify for government assistance. It's ridiculous.
It's wild. That is
Yeah.
wild to me. So where do we live then? You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we have a few more later questions here, and or actually, if there's anything else that you want, I don't want to seem like we're just sort of glossing over this because it's a serious topic. I know we've kind of what you were actually, I'll dial back a second there because you did mention something that I remember learning not that long ago that yeah, when it comes to there's been stories of couples that can't get married without losing one
Right.
of the partners losing their disability, because then their incomes become cumulative, and then they cross the threshold. That is just absurd. So that's kind of what they were saying about the marriage equality. It's not just about same-sex marriages.
Right.
It's also just about and I do know some couples where one partner is too disabled to work and the other one supports them both, but that shouldn't matter that much. It's at this point in as a single individual, I will just go ahead and say that being single right now in this world is absurdly expensive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. 100%. I mean,
so the thought of having two people trying to consist off one person's income is even
yeah.
more absurd.
Well, I will tell you this. So a couple of years ago, I had some things happen in my business and I was worried about money, right?
Mhm.
Which I have been a very successful entrepreneur. At the time it had been 7 years, right? I had consistently made more money every single year. My books were perfect. My credit is perfect, which matters. And I applied for a line of credit and I walked into my bank. I am with a very reputable bank. It's a large bank here in the States. And I applied and I showed them everything and they said, oh yeah. They said, how much you need? I said, well, 30,000, I think. And, I don't even know. And they said, well, you can get a line of credit for 200,000 or 300,000 with your numbers. And I went, okay, now you don't have to draw the line of credit. Like it's just there. It's a safety net. And I felt a lot more stable about my situation with that. And they said, okay, great. The application could take anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. This, that, and the other thing. And I said, okay, great. I was coming up on something that was going to be potentially be really hard on my business. And that would have given me plenty of time. So the 6 weeks goes by. I hear nothing. Nobody's answering my emails. And I finally get somebody on the phone and they say, yeah, we rejected you. We outright rejected you weeks ago. We're sorry you didn't get the notification. You don't have enough credit experience. And it's not like, are you ready for this? You have a partner that you can fall back on. And I went, great. Okay. So I'm being punished for being a single femme presenting person with a business that's always paid its bills and been really successful. And I need help once and I can't get it because I don't have a husband. What?
Yeah, I know some of what you're talking about. I've had really excellent credit for over a decade myself, and when I went off on my own to do this endeavor, all of a sudden the banks are just like, wait, you don't have a full-time job, and I become radioactive.
Yeah.
And it's like, even if I show them I had a $33,000 contract this month, I had this contract this month, it doesn't matter, because to them it's all about
That's right.
safety and security. And I'm also very proud to be able to say that I've never gotten, until very, very recently, for almost 20 years, I've never gotten help from my parents financially.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, I should qualify that. They did. There was money for me to go to college the first time, but I've been to college
Sure.
3 times. So the other 2 were me. I paid for those myself. Um, and like all these years, but now it's like it's a different thing. Like, and it really kind of upsets me how expensive everything is now. Like,
Yeah.
it's even making like $100,000 used to be cushy, and now that's like basically just barely getting by.
Right, exactly. And I live in New York, and if I tell you how many people say, "Oh yeah, $100,000, that's nothing," and I'm like, that is still a lot of money to me. That is still an insane amount of money to me. Like, I remember the first time I made 6 figures in a year, and I will never, that will never not seem like a huge amount of money to me. And there are people here who that is just like, that's a bad year for them, so it's wild. I mean, inflation and things are expensive, but you're right. And the world is not set up for us as well, and I think that, student loans. Like, I'm one of the only people in my age group that I know that has not had to worry about student loans. My parents basically said, if you go to a city college, which was cheap, very reasonable, we'll pay. And I went, okay, well, sure. And I got very lucky that way. And that set me up to be able to do this. But outside of that, like, yeah, I think it's been like 25 years since I've had help from my parents,
Yeah. Well, on that cheery note, well, I have a few lighter questions that I wanted to ask, as well as we kind of wind down here. I think we've covered a lot of really important stuff.
Yeah.
So,
covered all the ground for sure.
Yeah. So these are the original version of Hat Collecting. I asked the same set of questions every time, and I liked that because I found, like, yes, some of the questions got the same answer pretty much all the time, which is not very helpful, but I would get unique answers to some of them, and there would be like little gold nuggets in there of wisdom or perspective. But this time, that's a little bit too much, like, galaxy braining for me, of like being super structured and planned and everything. So it's a little bit more conversational this time, but I do have a few questions. So speaking of, we're both big artists, and I wanted to ask, what was the last new thing, asterisk up to your interpretation, the last new thing that you created, and why?
So I'm actually working on a piece right now. I'm writing my very own musical theater show for the first time, right? So usually I collaborate with somebody, but this one is all me. And it's a look at the artist's life from a non-cishet white male perspective. And so it takes works like Company and, I'm sorry, not Company, Sunday in the Park with George and Tick, Tick, Boom, and some of those conventions of, artists and sacrifice and all of that, and puts it on the lens of a non-binary artist, non-binary AFAB artist. And it uses a lot of my story. I had a very dramatic breakup the night that I first had a reading of my first show. And that's something that's apparently very common. Artists, their relationships can implode once success starts to become a thing. And so I explored that, and what it means to write and what it means to sacrifice, having a normal life in order to create your art. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I got to the end of the first draft of my book and lyrics this weekend. So that's the last thing that I would consider that I've created.
Very cool. I'm not going to answer these questions because I don't want to make this impossibly long. So I'll just stick with highlighting you on these. What was the last playful thing that you did just for yourself?
Playful. Well,
and you're up to your interpretation.
Well, I have a 17-year-old cat, and I play with him every morning. So there's that. I did that this morning.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yeah, and he's 17, which is old for a cat. And so for me, that's like, it absolutely is a requirement that I have to spend a little bit of time with him every morning.
That makes a lot of sense. I really wish that I could have a cat, but like almost every roommate I've ever had has been allergic. So, yeah, it's been a shame. But yeah, like I asked that because this is one of the questions from the original run, because a lot of this is part of what already makes sense. I was talking about before. I do playfulness workshops because a lot of us grown-ups, we get pulled away from that, and like it's all just about like work and responsibilities and adulting, as our generation likes to say, and if we don't carve out that time for ourselves, then we often just don't have it. So I like to get people thinking about that, like, you can do something every day, no matter how small it is. So don't forget to be playful is my message. I love that.
Love it.
And yeah, the last thing here, last formal question that I have anyways, if this hasn't already been answered, or maybe if you want to like put it succinctly into like a sound bite, what lights you up the most?
Yeah. Okay. So that I can answer very easily, and that is ideas, other people's ideas, my own ideas. Ideas can change the world. And so that's why I get out of bed in the morning. That's what I dream about at night. That's what I, really think about and put my heart into my work with, is when somebody has a great idea, we got to see where that goes, because you don't know what the next global shift of consciousness is going to be. And it could be yours, so.
Yeah. And I think that that's really important, and I get that too, because not just because of the coaching thing, but like it's kind of one of those things. I think when you're like an empathetic person and you go through struggles, you see people struggling, and like this isn't necessary. And similarly, it's like people just need a little bit of support. Like I've heard people say, like, we might think we really think the art that our friends make is cool, but we don't actually tell them. It's like, just take that time, take the 5 seconds one day, just be like, hey, Bob, or why I defaulted to Bob. Hey, Jennifer, like, I really love the art that you make. Or, hey, Susan, I really love the art that you make. Like, just kind of because whenever I get those like unsolicited comments and feedback, it makes my year. And like I screenshot them if that's possible, and I put it in a little folder, because I wouldn't say that I have imposter syndrome anymore. It's more just like, I think I've said this to you, I'm like, I believe that I'm really good at what I do. I just need more of the right people to see and hear it.
100%.
And I think a lot of people get stuck on the imposter, like, am I good enough? It's like, yes, you are. You just need the right people to see and hear it. That's kind of what I think. And so that is part of why it's, shine language coaching, because it's about finding the thing that like lights you up. And that's one of the things that it's like, people are at their best when they're talking about what they're passionate about. And if the right person is passionate, like I've said, people are passionate about like sponges, and they can like give a really moving like talk about sponges, like I'm gonna be engrossed, like I'm gonna want to listen to that. So like you just have to find that spark and find the right, as you said, the right outlet, the right audience, and the right way to message it. So we are on the same page with that.
Love it.
Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think you're right about the unsolicited comments. It's really wonderful when it happens, and or I know for me that could keep me going, right? There are times I'm like, I am done. I want to give up. I don't know what any of this is for. And then I hear from somebody and they're like, I just listened to this, or I just, oh my God, I just gave a talk, and the positioning that you laid out worked, or whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, all right, I can keep going. That is fuel. So I agree with you. I mean, I think for the wider world, for whoever is watching or listening now or later, right? I just, don't be afraid to do that, because you can be the difference between somebody stopping and keeping going.
Absolutely. And that reminds me of, speaking of the music thing, I haven't gotten a lot of feedback about my music, but like one of the more common pieces that I used to get was like, so most of the music I make is kind of like alternative, like
Mm-hmm.
alternative melodic metal. It's instrumental, so it's kind of more like productivity music, if anything. And like it's more niche. It's like a certain kind of taste, and I know it's not for most people. And so I've had a few people say to me like, I can really like hear the technicality of it. Like, you're a talented musician, and they appreciate that. But like, it's not my cup of tea, and like I'm
Yeah.
okay with that because they're still recognizing that I'm doing something, you know, cool there, even if it's not their thing. Like, I have several friends who are like DJs or, you know, electronic music artists, and like that's not really my thing. But I couldn't DJ a set. I don't know how to do that. So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
I still, you know, game recognized game, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. This is such a
Thank
fun
you.
conversation. And yeah, I cannot recommend Marie enough if you are
Thank
looking
you.
to get into speaking or getting on stages or anything kind of in that realm. I would imagine you. I'm not. I'll say. I think you've told you this. Like, I'm not a huge musical person, but like I would still say like go to, because you're passionate about it, which means it's going to be good. So go see
Thank
Marie's
you.
musical when it's ready.
Thank you. Well, and you'll be on my show next week, so follow me on LinkedIn and join, and it'll be a very different conversation because we'll talk about your ideas and what gets you out of bed in the morning and all of those good things. So and we'll talk about what ideas you think are going to change the world. So join us next Monday.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next time.